In the book itch, Freedom, Truth, and Harlem's Greatest Bookstore, he yells out of his bookstore, "Don't get took, read a book." And that's what we're going to do today in our young adult nonfiction and fiction section of our best books of 2015. So welcome to Well Read, a program about a little bit of this and a little bit of that at your Ames Public Library. And I'm Jerry, and with me I have Tanvi and Danielle, who are going to share their expertise in our young adult literature materials that we have in graphic novels and in fiction and nonfiction. So welcome.
Thank you.
Hi. So I think we need to start out with the book that I think kind of divides us in age, and that would be our Steve Jobs, the insanely great Steve Jobs. And so who would like to talk about this wonderful graphic novel biography of one of a very important person that has been in our history?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that one.
Okay, let's talk about it.
So it's a graphic memoir, so it's a graphic novel, but it's a nonfiction title, and it's about Steve Jobs, and it's about how Steve Jobs became the Steve Jobs that we all know. So it starts out from when he's very little, and you learn a lot of stuff about him that's kind of amazing. It just sort of seems like the stars aligned to give us the Steve Jobs. So he grew up in what we now know as Silicon Valley. His neighbor was, I believe, Mr. Hewlett of Hewlett-Packard, who started HP in his own garage, and so little Steve Jobs could go next door to Mr. Hewlett's garage, and how he met Steve Wozniak and how Apple became Apple. And what's cool about it is the pictures, they aren't really reminiscent of what we think of when we think of Apple. So they're not sleek, they're not sophisticated, they're not stark. They're very kind of wavy, which at first was kind of jarring to me because it didn't seem to match the Steve Jobs that I think of when I think of Apple. But you learn how kind of frenetic his life was and how he kind of had all of these amazing ideas and they were jumping around in his mind, and he kind of jumped from project to project all the time. And so you start to see how that illustration style really matches his life.
And that it does. So you talked about the illustrations.
Yep.
I want to go to a 2-page spread here that happens to be all about the technology in the 1960s. And I know we've talked about how it when I read this book as a person kind of the 1960s, kind of, and how when you read this book, it's a kind of a different feel because this was my life. I mean, I had a rotary phone that I dialed, and we were on a party line, and we had records, with all that. That is just kind of not. I mean, it's knowledge you have, but it's not experiences you necessarily have. So I think the book, when I read through it, and I was reading my history, my life, of my experiences, and you all were reading history. So tell me about how you feel about the different types of things that you heard, not only about his life, but about...
The amazing thing about those spreads is that, so they show you what the technology of the decade was. And when you see it all illustrated out like that, you start to realize how revolutionary what he introduced really was. Because we sort of think of iPods as, everyone, they're so ubiquitous, everyone has one. But when you look at what was out around that time, it's just amazing that he was able to dream that stuff up.
And using his neighbor to get pieces and parts to put together. But it wasn't an easy process for him. I mean, he really went up and down in emotional realms, and so even the confident Steve Jobs that we saw or have seen on stage, that really isn't who he was. That he was struggling with lots of interpersonal type of in relationships and with himself, and a very interesting. The technology part was what I guess stuck in my mind, just because I did that, or that was the computer I worked on at first, and so because it was part of my life as much as the iPods are for you all, too, which leads me to like all good books do, gives you questions to discuss or for conversation. Is like, what is it going to be that when the iPods are in here, what's the next chapter of technology?
Holograms. Pretty sure it's holograms.
So let's go. That happened to be a memoir, like you said, but we also have graphic novels, and again, the graphic novels are novels that are told in graphic form or pictures in addition to the words that are on the page. So they're not comic books, as we spoke in a previous show with that, but a wonderful way to tell a story visually and through conversation and or narrative. So Danielle, this was yours.
It was. So this is Gotham Academy. So it does have a little bit to do with some comic books. If you know, maybe Batman lives in Gotham. But this main character, she's a sophomore in high school, and she is coming back from a summer that she doesn't really remember too well. And there's a lot of mystery happening in it at first. You're wondering, why did she break up with her boyfriend? Why does she get really quiet and nervous when Batman's name is mentioned? Because, he's a hero. Why would you do that? What happened to her mom and where did she go? So you've got all these questions set in a boarding school, which I feel is an awesome place to set any book. Well, as you can see, there's lots of adventure going on, scaling some ropes, dealing with some ghosts, dealing with mean girls and mean boys, not to mention her ex-boyfriend. So there's a ton going on. So
a must read, do you think?
I think so,
All
especially
right.
if you're into Batman. But if you're not, there's a lot in there that you would like. How to deal with friendships, parenting relationships.
So it's not just all about superheroes in the fictitious sense. It's also about day-to-day life. So how about Lumberjanes?
All right.
The title is just very interesting.
Yes. So this is Beware the Kitten Holy. So it's about these 5 girls at a camp, and it's like a Girl Scout camp. They're supposed to be off getting their badges and hiking and singing jolly songs, and they do all of that. Especially interspersed throughout this book are great little snippets of what badges to get. And I think there's a tea ceremony one in there and stuff like that. But it all has connections to what they're doing. But at the same time, while they're doing all this jolly things, they're like werebears, so like werewolves, running around in the woods. They end up getting into a little bit more than they expected they would, I think, when they go to camp. So there's a awesome supernatural element to it, as well as just being a fantastic friendship / female empowerment story.
It says on the back, friendship to the max.
Yep, that's the Lumberjanes motto.
So talking about friendship, in Roller Girl, we have some friendships going on, but not necessarily in the way that our friends want to have. So that's at that time period that you're kind of breaking away and keeping friends. And this happens to be a Newbery Honor book as well, another graphic novel, but it's also I think we need to shout out that we chose this for our battle book for the 6th graders before it was a winner of the Newbery winner. So that's the quality of librarians that you have at the Ames Public Library. We know our stuff. So tell me about this one, Roller Girl.
So this is about a girl named Astrid. And Astrid has had the same best friend since she was very little. And they're, I believe, 12 or 13 and heading into their summer. And Astrid's mom takes them one night to one of her famous cultural experiences where she just tries to introduce these 2 girls into all sorts of new things. and it's a roller derby match, which is a very violent game played
To say the least.
played on roller skates, and I want to say fought by, I guess, rather than played by, fought by very awesome women who are fast and furious and have very cool roller derby names. And I believe the one she really likes in this book is called Rainbow Fight or something like that. So like Rainbow Bright, but Rainbow Fight. But she wants to go to roller derby camp, but her best friend, refuses to do so.
Well, she's also a little bit more sophisticated than
Yes,
that.
she's a ballet dancer. She's starting to get interested in boys. And Astrid is still pretty much, I'm going to race really fast on my roller skates, which is...
But she's not quite good at it.
No,
Very good at it
I
at
love
all.
that about this book. I love it, love it, love it that she struggles so much, but she still keeps going and she still finds it.
Persistent.
She still finds it a fun activity. And so it's about, persistence and friendship, because she makes other friends, but she also kind of comes to terms with what she shared with her other friend.
And what's happening with
you can grow apart from each other and still have really fun memories and still be friends, but not quite the same.
She also had, I think it was Rainbow Bright or Light, that she was looked up to as a hero and wrote letters to.
Yeah, wrote her letters.
And so there was a lot of character development, I think, positive, paying forward, type of being a good person, type of in the monks of trying to grow up and come of age, type of really a powerful book, I think. And you don't necessarily think of roller derby as well, at least I don't think of roller derby as a place that you learn how to have character, but I really think they develop a lot. She knows who she becomes and wants to be.
Yeah, I think it's...
And it's through that roller derby experience that she's able to be different and be okay with it. Mm-hmm. So, Roller Girl. So who wants to start the next? We're going to go, well, let's go ahead and go to our YA nonfiction, and we'll go with our biography.
Yes,
Tanvi?
it's a very different kind of book than the others that we've been talking about. It's a much more mature book. It's definitely on the upper end of YA, so definitely sophomores and up. And it starts out, it's a memoir by a guy named Jason Schmidt. He grew up in the 70s, 80s. And it starts out with him coming home from school one day when he's about 16 years old, and his father is basically in a pool of his own blood in the kitchen. And so Jason is trying to get him up. He gets him out of the house onto the front porch. He's basically carrying his father out to wait for the paramedics, and he's also now covered in his father's blood. This introductory chapter ends with you finding out that his father has AIDS, and now Jason is covered in his father's blood. And so it takes a step back in the next chapter, and you learn about Jason from the time he was very young, a toddler growing up, to this point where his father has AIDS. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. It's kind of one of those books that's written so beautifully, but if it were fiction, you probably wouldn't like it because you couldn't believe that someone could live through so much trauma. So he grows up just with his father. His mother abandoned him when he was little, and his father is a drug abuser. And he's, at the beginning, he's a closeted gay man. And so he's growing up with his father. They're constantly moving up and down the West Coast. His father can't hold down a job. They're often homeless, or they're living in really ramshackle apartments. And it's just heartbreaking. You see how he deals with all of this abuse, but he never wants to call the police because he's afraid of his father having to leave him as a result. And it's just very powerful that someone could survive through all of that. And now he's an attorney, and it's just amazing. It's kind of one of those books that's kind of in the vein of A Child Called It. So people who like that one, yep.
They'll like that.
Yeah.
Well, and then again, using the book to find that other people's lives are like yours. Hopefully not necessarily, but I know that they're like yours and they survived and
Yes.
were able to come out of that. And that's what many of our novels do. So Danielle, do you want to speak to Boys Don't Knit?
Yes, so that's going to go, we're going to do like a 180 from...
That's what we're doing on this whole thing, bouncing around.
But that is a very, very funny book. So that's Boys Don't Knit in Public. And it is about a boy named Ben. And Ben is a pretty typical, like, 15-year-old boy, kind of crude. He is got some friends who are not smart always. Ben doesn't always make the greatest choices, and one of his choices before the book started has led to him being on probation. And so as part of his probation, he needs to do of several things. And I should mention, this is in England, so some things are a little different than how we would work. He needs to take a class outside of school, and he needs to keep a diary. So that is what this book is. It's his diary. And he his classes, he looks at them and he decides, oh my gosh, I can't take mechanics. My dad is teaching that. If I take it, it's one more thing we're going to have to bond over. And so he doesn't do that. And so he decides to take knitting because the teacher that he thinks is going to be teaching it is from his school, and he finds her very good looking. So he goes that direction. It turns out that it's not that teacher at all. In fact, it's the mother of one of his age-appropriate crushes. And but it's a knitting class. And it turns out that our friend Ben is a really, really talented knitter. He's a very anxious kind of character. He's very, so it kind of quiets his mind when he knits, like, because he can do. And so it's a hilarious book. He gets into competitive knitting.
Wow, I didn't know there was such a thing.
I didn't either. I Googled it after I read it, and I didn't find too much on it, but I might just not have been.
But it does exist.
Yeah.
That's weird.
So
that's very interesting. Books are about the strangest things, but
I really liked that one. I laughed out loud several times. So, like it says, Ben Fletcher, accidental criminal, liar, master of mohair.
So sounds like a fun book to do for an escape type of book. How about Dumpling?
Dumpling's also really funny.
That's so.
Yeah, and not set in England. It's set in the United States. It's set in rural, small town Texas. And in this small town in Texas, the big thing to do every year is to go to the Miss Bluebonnet Teen Beauty Pageant. It's sort of the equivalent of going to like a cyclone event here. It's a big deal. The main character couldn't care less about the beauty pageant. Her name is Willow Dean. She's got a pretty good life. She's got great friends. She's really charismatic. She has a job that she loves at some fast food place. She's got a crush on the fry cook Beau, private school Beau, she calls him. And she feels really good about herself. And she's also fat. She describes herself. She's not husky. She's not chubby. She's fat. And she's totally okay with that. Until fry cook Beau starts to reciprocate some of her feelings, which sounds like it would be great. She'd be really happy, and she is really happy. But Willow Dean starts to lose some of her confidence. She starts to think ahead in their relationship. She starts to wonder, is Beau gonna stop finding me attractive? Is Beau gonna like me less? And this is very unlike Willow Dean. She's not the type of person to lose her confidence. She is the type of person to just very rashly and boldly do whatever she feels like doing. And so she decides that she's going to gain her confidence back by entering into this Bluebonnet Teen Beauty Pageant, which in this small town in Texas is kind of big news that Willow Dean would be entering. So Willow Dean kind of recruits some of her misfit friends, and they all join together, and they all decide to enter into this beauty pageant with some hilarious results, some pretty unexpected results. It's not a typical, she finds her voice, and everyone thinks she's perfect, and she wins this beauty pageant. There are some shenanigans that go down in the beauty pageant. But what I really like about this book is that when Willow Dean enters into the beauty pageant, people start coming up to her and telling her, "You're so brave, like you're so brave for doing this. This is amazing." And she says at one point, "I don't want this to be brave. I want this to be normal." Yeah, and it's a really kind of poignant moment in an otherwise pretty, fun, offbeat kind of book. That's what I really liked about it.
And I think that's kind of thinking of that a little bit more globally as far as the publishing world, that I think that's what we want, or what is happening in this. We want diverse books.
Yes.
We want it to be normal. We don't want to necessarily point out that, you have to be skinny, or that being heavy and being in a beauty pageant doesn't go together. It should be just naturally done and be able to happen, because we are in a world that we are different, and we all are different, and the world is different, and the world isn't always kind, and it is good, and it's all these things all put together. And I think our books help us bring those things together and cope with those type of activities, even in our fantasy world. So do you want to talk just a couple seconds minutes on the fantasy that you've chosen, Danielle?
Sure, I have a couple there. One is Carry On, and it's Rainbow Rowell's book that she kind of took as it's a takeoff of the Chosen One concept, where the one person who can save the world, and this person happens to be named Simon Snow, and Simon is having some issues with this last year at Watford, which is like his Hogwarts, and he can't quite figure out what he's supposed to be doing. He can't figure out what is wrong with his magic. It doesn't seem to be working the right way. Everybody's expecting him to solve everything, and then to top it all off, his roommate Boz, who is also his sworn enemy, is missing. And Simon feels like he is a little bit more worried than he should be.
So all of these in our books, that they're kind of all struggling with who they are again, and what they should be, even in our fantasy books, as far as finding out what we want to do with our world. And that's what books do for each and every one of us, is to find our place, or find a place we would or could be, or to reinforce who we are. And that's what's important with that, when you are having the book tell you the story, or having someone read you the story, that you listen and you hear those characters, and you think that not only are you in that book, but others are in that book as well, in your community, in your world. And it's a way of us, enjoying the world and taking us places. So find one of these books and read something that is kind of outside your comfort zone, and challenge yourself to find one of those characters for you or for someone that you know. So explore these lists. You can find those at the Ames Library and on our website, and we'd be happy to have you come in and tell you all about some of our other favorite books, because as you can tell, we can talk for a very long time about our favorite books. So until the next time, or until we see you in the library, happy reading, and thank you.